Okay, guys, welcome to episode 3 of Ollie and Matt Chew the Fat. Today, we are talking about maintaining muscle like a boss, which is, of course, very pertinent to these turbulent times that we're living in. Training at home, getting lots and lots of feedback, not only from clients, but from people that I'm speaking to on social media, etc., who are really, really concerned about losing muscle with the closure of our gyms, etc. So Matt and I thought it'd be a really good idea to jump on and basically talk about the nuances of A, building muscle, and B, what that means for us now that we're at home and we've probably only got a couple of resistance bands and maybe a small amount of weight. So what are the things that we can be focusing on to ensure that we're not losing a huge amount of muscle mass? Yeah, we'll just get stuck into it. So I guess I'll kick things off, Matt, just by prefacing this by saying, you know, the gym is one aspect of building muscle, or at least maintaining muscle. And there are just so many other components that affect our ability to retain tissue. Okay, it's not a case of we don't have our gyms now, all of a sudden we're gonna lose all our gains and be fucking triathletes. It's not gonna happen like that. Okay, so that is the most important message to get. Now, Matt and I were just speaking off air about people's ability to progress during these times, and there's a kind of a feeling going around within the industry amongst trainers and coaches that you can progress during these times, and we're kind of a slightly different opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, and again, we discussed this. I've got certain clients who have an amazingly well-equipped home gym, and so their ability to progress during these times, you know, they probably can make some progress. But for the most part, we're talking on a very general sense. If you've got really, really limited equipment, you're probably not going to progress. But maintaining muscle is definitely doable if we focus on the things that we're going to chat about today. So, Matt, dude, what's one of the first things that we can focus on to retain muscle during the pandemic when we're at home and we've got resistance bands and a small amount of weight?
Sure. I think I wanted to start by saying that, I mean, we could just wrap this up really quick and be like, we've both been on Instagram. And if you've been on Instagram, then you know that all you really need for gains is a couple of cans of beans, maybe some bottles of water and a broomstick.
Yeah.
If you're doing those workouts, put the beans in the cupboard, drink the water and shove the broomstick up your arse. You're not going to make gains with it. But in all seriousness, Ollie's right. With some clients, okay, have a really solid home gym. Those people are not part of the discussion that we're going to have largely. There will be some carryover, but let's be real, 90% of people like me and you and I should say, have some equipment, but limited equipment. And actually, let's be real, most people have less than that because you've got the half rack in the garage.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an easy bar and a couple of kettlebells and like 60 kilos of weight. I'm not doing a huge amount of that, but I can still do something. And I think that one of the most overlooked factors in programming and training anyway, outside of COVID, is tempo. So people are like, you know, looking at reps and sets, real Billy basic stuff, but then largely people ignore tempo. And you know, and I've seen on your channel, like when you're training, you're doing some slow shit, it's horrible. It's horrible in the gym and it's horrible at home. And you need comparably less weight to roast yourself by slowing shit down, especially, and this is something that any amount of biomechanics education will tell you, is just respecting the change of direction, especially. So you'll find that when you do slow stuff down, let's just take a squat, because squatting against the wall with a foam roller seems to be like the Corona slut drop, right? Like, I'm coining that now. If no one's coined that, I'm having
that is amazing. I love that.
Off the top of my head. I think if you're doing like Corona slut drops, squats against the wall, you'll find that when you're in the gym, you've probably been changing direction using some amount of elasticity in the joints and soft tissue at the bottom of the squat, at the bottom range. And I think for most people, we're now having to slow stuff down, and they're realizing how much you can create, how much of a fucking burn you can create, especially in your quads. Like I saw you doing press ups this morning, right?
It was yesterday, I think. Yeah, yesterday.
Rim, mate. Absolutely rim.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know. It's like we've been speaking about a lot is focusing on things that you can control and disregarding the things that you can't. And that's really important from a psychological standpoint, because you can get so bogged down with the fact that you were previously hack squatting fucking 300 kilos or whatever it might be, and now you find yourself at home doing the Corona slut drop, as Matt would call it. You know, the difference there is massive. But we should probably touch on, Matt, like the three mechanisms of hypertrophy and what that means for us now. So the three mechanisms of hypertrophy are mechanical tension. So that's essentially like the amount of weight that's crossing a joint. We have metabolic stress and muscle damage. Okay. Now, muscle damage is kind of up for debate at the minute. They're trying to do some research into whether or not muscle damage is actually a driver of hypertrophy, of muscle growth, or if indeed if it's just like a byproduct of the other two. But by slowing the reps down, as you said there, and creating that really slow eccentric and also the concentric as well, that causes a huge amount of muscle damage. So if you've ever done like a slow barbell RDL, for example, your hamstrings the next day are going to be absolutely fried. It's that slow eccentric, isn't it? That's causing a lot of muscle damage. So right now, when we're training at home, if we've got that 8 kilo kettlebell or whatever it might be, we're not going to be able to focus on mechanical tension as our primary source of muscle growth or muscle retention. We're going to have to focus on metabolic stress and muscle damage. So slowing the reps down is massively important. And by doing so, you create so much more internal focus, you know, your ability to feel muscles contracting and using the appropriate muscles to get the job done and to move from point A to B, and not using, like Matt said, the stretch reflex at the bottom of the squat, for example, using that elasticity to get back up. We take that element away and we have a huge amount of internal focus on the quads, then they're going to work to a higher degree. So it's all about pissing with the cock you've got and not stressing about not having loads of weight and focusing on what you can control.
100%. I think that if you look at it with only that alone, if we were to discuss nothing else and left it at that, which we're not going to, but if we were to, I would say that, see that if you were, each trainer or trainee was able to develop that ability throughout lockdown, moving back into the gym at the end of this, you're going to be going back in as a far, far greater trainee, because you're going to have a far greater, I hate mind-muscle connection. I think it's just been bastardized, but yeah, like, I'm going to use that because I don't have a better way of describing it for people who understand it, is that mind-muscle connection will be greatly and vastly improved. And if it's greatly improved, then going back into any movement, the ability to feel any muscle is only going to benefit your training long-term, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's again, that's a really nice way psychologically to take something that could be deemed as like a really rubbish situation to be in for people who are concerned about their body composition to a positive. You know, I'm going to use this time to reset my movements, to really focus on form, control, and let that carry over to when we get back into the gym, which is something that I'm doing with my clients, is saying, look, let's use this time to allow soft tissues to recover from using heavy weight all the time. You know, tendons and ligaments are all beaten up. Guys and girls have got sore knees, elbows from lifting heavy and trying to progress. Let's use this time as recovery. Let's use it as time to focus on the form, like I say, and the tempo of the reps. And then, as you say, when we get back in the gym, you're going to be a far better trainee. So it's definitely psychologically one of the ways that you can take something positive from everything going on.
For sure. I think, like, you touched on something, I'm going to take a bit of a tangent, and it wasn't something that we discussed that we would chat about, but I'm going to throw it out. Just maybe we don't have to chase it, but we can throw it out there. And that is, like, I've been speaking to my clients largely around that you can only piss for the cock you've got theory, where it's like, look, this is the hand you've been dealt. You can lament training in a gym for as long as you like, but like that, like, is not going to bring you any gains. In fact, it's going to bring you negative. You will lose gains if you just spend your time crying. Like, let's move to what we can do. And for the large part, I've got my guys doing as much as they can with these areas of hypertrophy, but at the same time, I've been using this opportunity to sort of impose aerobic work on my clients, because having that aerobic base for me is like an absolute paramount of every single trainee I have, is building that aerobic base so that we can not only improve mitochondrial efficiency, so how good you are at producing energy, but also the number of them, so what's called mitochondrial biogenesis. And effectively, that is my first port of call with every client. The problem is, clients come in, they want to get jacked and shredded. And you're like, right, bro, I need you to go and do some cardio. They're like, nah, that's not what I signed up for, which is fine. So I would never program like that. But right now, I've been like beating the same drum with them. Like, we need to improve aerobic capacity. We need to improve an aerobic base. No. Now that we're stuck at home, they're like, all right, mate, maybe I should. Like, I don't really have any excuses anymore. So you're not going to lose gains unless you're doing excessive aerobic work. But to be doing like a decent level of aerobic work and building some aerobic capacity in this time, you will actually be better at making gains on the back end of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%, totally agree. And even if you just step away from the physiological element of what's happening there, you know, mechanistically from having a better aerobic base, you know, that's going to cross over to better gains within your resistance training. Just stepping away from that and actually looking at it as a training stimulus and what that does for us, again, psychologically and hormonally. When you train, you're releasing hormones that make you feel good, you know, your endorphins, these things that make you feel great after training. And that's part of what we miss by not having our gyms open. You get the exact same feeling for going for a run and pushing yourself down the road, and you'll get back and you'll finish, you'll feel like shit when you're doing it, especially if you're not a decent runner. But then you'll get those rush of endorphins and you'll feel fucking great, man. And it's a great way of replacing what we were potentially getting from the gym now with running or cycling or whatever it is you decide to do. So it's about having a broader look on your fitness and your health, man. It's not just about one of my mates has got a great term that I'm going to nick here. He calls people Captain Sagittal. So like everyone's moving in the sagittal plane. They're like pressed back and forwards. They're pressing up and down. They squat up and down. They don't rotate. There's nothing going on there. And we're quite two-dimensional as gym trainees a lot. And that even the prospect of going out for a run really like sends a shiver down people's spine. But most of these people haven't even tried it. Matt, I know you run like pretty much every day. I've done enough running in my lifetime to never want to run again, but it is a fucking great feeling, man. When you finish and you've had a tough run, you feel awesome for it afterwards.
100%. I think this isn't really like I don't want to turn this into like this isn't a sales pitch for running. Like it doesn't bother me if I run or not. There are benefits, but there are other ways to skin that cat. Like I've got skipping ropes, like whatever. There's 1,000,001 ways to do it. Even just shitloads of steps. But running definitely works for me. And I think I hate it because I hate it not because it's difficult, but because I'm left alone with my thoughts. Like and like that, when you're just you and your demons, that's why people hate running, in my opinion. You don't truly believe anybody likes running. I think the sort of bodybuilding community, that like any client, they look at it and they're like, so if I do running, I'm gonna get skinny. Like that's the paradigm, and I think changing that. I think like the guys at Muscle Nerds are big on changing that idea. People don't do the sport they do and end up looking the way they look. They look. So what I'm trying to say is, you don't run a marathon and look like Paula Radcliffe. Paula Radcliffe runs marathons because she looks like Paula Radcliffe. Like she was predisposed to that sport. Like you're not going to look like what's his name? Like the guy Ikoji or whatever his name is that ran the fastest marathon time. You turn into him because you went for a 5K or a fucking 2-mile run. Like relax. Ultimately, if you have a decent amount of muscle, you're going to burn a handful of calories on a 2-mile run, like 200-300 calories for some people. Like it's not going to be long. And I think it's not going to lead to a loss of gains. Like I've said, if anything, in my opinion, it will lead to the ability to accrue better tissue later on. And indeed, the ability to, again, in my own opinion, consume more dietary carbohydrate whilst getting leaner later on as well. So the fitter and leaner you are, sort of more aerobically fit you are, in my experience with my clients, I'll be able to keep their carbs comparatively higher as we diet down, because their ability to digest and partition dietary carbohydrates massively improved through aerobic capacity. So I think we should probably try and tangent away from running, because it's turned into like Runner's Digest. Runners
Club episode. Just change the fucking title of this one.
Next week we'll bring our running shoes.
Okay, let's switch focus onto some of the other things that we can look at then in an attempt to maintain muscle throughout COVID-19. So we obviously looked at, switching focus from mechanical tension as our primary source of hypertrophy, or at least muscle retention, to metabolic stress and muscle damage. But even outside of that, this really does lend us an opportunity to focus on things that we potentially let fall to the wayside, over the however many months or years you've been training and dieting for. Things like your recovery, things like your sleep, supplementation, nutrition. These are all things that we can really hone in and knuckle down on now that we've got, I guess, some disposable time. I hate saying that because I know there are people who are still at their full workload capacity and some. But for the most part, a lot of people are finding themselves at a bit of a loose end, and they're worried about their physique. So let's talk about some of the things that we can focus on outside of training in an attempt to retain as much muscle as possible.
I think that's a great point. I think people look at it like they have this kind of like, we should probably go with the Kubler-Ross model at some point, because it's kind of what's happening. Like they're like, oh shit, I'm going to lose all my gains. And then they flip all their attention over to, right, how can I just train and create the most stimulus I possibly can? And 100% of their focus goes to trying to replicate their old sessions. You need to detach from your old sessions. They are now locked in a gym somewhere that will be open shortly, but stop trying to recreate them and reproduce them, because you can't. We need to create something new. Now, that's kind of what we've discussed already, is creating different stimulus. But what you've pretty well articulated there is that actually training's only part of the puzzle. And it was always only part of the puzzle. And you all knew it was only part of the puzzle before, because every single one of you checking in with either Ollie or myself is tracking a shitload of biofeedback and a shitload of other metrics other than just training. Training's probably 2 or 3 lines on a check-in form. The rest is sleep, recovery, all these different bits, nutrition. For me, I've always been a huge fan of hammering sleep with my clients. Like, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of sleep for making gains, or indeed retaining muscle, because I don't think I said it, I meant to say at the start, was our focus, in my opinion, I think we did start to go down this hole, but I didn't kind of follow it, is your focus should move away from the accrual of new tissue to the retention of what you have. And then anything that you do accrue, if you manage to, is a bonus. So rather than over-promising and under-delivering to yourself, I would always promote the under-promise, over-deliver. So my goal in lockdown is to retain as much tissue as possible. And then if you're pleasantly surprised that your measurements maybe increase in your arms because you had something that you could do shitloads of bicep curls and tricep, like skull crusher or something like that, bonus. But moving the focus towards retention rather than the accrual of new tissue, I think sleep and nutrition are probably the 2 biggest next steps for me, because people are going to be largely eating a load of shite, snacking, not keeping it, because their training's not as tight. They see that as an excuse to kind of let that seep into the other aspects of their progress. I think hammering sleep's important, much like Jude thinks so just now as well. You can hear him in the background.
I think
he loses gains, bro.
He needs his afternoon nap to catch them gains.
That's right, man.
Sleep's a massive one. I think what's he even saying? He's just like chanting Nana.
Well, it's because he's losing his gains. I've said it already. He's fucking devastated.
Yeah, sleep's a massive one. And I think whilst, it's easy for us to kind of sit here and say, we need to be focusing on that all the time, it is fair to presume that a lot of people do kind of undervalue their sleep hygiene. They kind of slip into bad habits with scrolling through their phone late at night, things of that nature. Things do slip. So this is really a good time to start forming habits that are going to be conducive to your progress long term. And that's what it's all about, is forming habits. Like when it hits 6, 7 o'clock, my blue light blocking glasses are on. I make sure I haven't consumed any caffeine after sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm taking a hot shower before bed. I'm making sure the room's nice and cool. I've got blackout blinds in my room. It's as dark as it can be. All these small things are like tiny little steps, but they have such a huge impact on everything else with your training and nutrition. And COVID-19 is offering you an amazing opportunity to focus on those things and to nail those things now and let those cross over. So that's definitely something to consider for sure.
I think that's a great point. I think this week's book recommendation should come off the back of that. Not that we're intending on recommending a book every week, but one thing to me when you're talking, Atomic Habits is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's actually what James Clear talks about in the book is almost irrelevant. Those 1% wins and the combined effect, the cumulative total of those 1% gains is massive. And that's the blue light blockers, that's the blackout blind, that's the hot shower, that's the cool room. For me, it's like we have a diffuser in the bedroom, we chuck lavender oil in it. I fucking hate the smell of lavender oil, but I'll do it anyway, because it makes me, like, it genuinely, again, does it improve sleep? Who's to know? If it does, it's 1%, but what does it cost me? $4.99 every 6 months. Right, cool, I'm in, like 100%. So
yeah.
I think people forget that like gains are legitimately made when you're sleeping. I always say
do
it's
it.
like you grow best when you rest, right? Like
Mm,
and if you're just always focusing on training and focusing all your time on like, how can I acquire more weights and more fucking fancy bits of equipment off eBay or fucking Facebook to go and improve your home gym, but you're sleeping like shit, no amount of new equipment is going to change that.
mm,
So I agree, sleep is a big one. And then nutrition, the other one is, I think people are, in my experience, my clients have been all right. I think we've come out the back of like the initial, well, the supermarkets have got nothing on the shelves, and then everybody's diet started getting a little bit questionable. Protein started to drop a touch.
mm,
We've kind of come out, we've rode that wave, and we're now at the other end. But I think nutrition's a big one for not ignoring. I think people are
mm,
giving themselves a little bit of rope with nutrition. I think most people could probably nod with that and be like, "Yeah, I've not been quite as tight as I was." And often it's because, in my opinion, the gym is the sort of linchpin for all of that holds it all together. If I'm going to the gym, I don't want to come home and eat like a dick because I've been and done that big savage session. But in absence of the savage session, you start to eat like a bit of a prick. Dinner starts to get a bit loose, get a bit
mm.
ropey. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said it there, the kind of the training and the gym side of things is like the underpinning thing, and then everything else kind of falls in place. And so often people neglect those other things, in particular nutrition, if that's not happening. And conversely, what we should be doing now more than ever, if we're not getting those savage sessions in, we should be focusing even more on nutrition and making sure food quality is good, making sure that we're eating you know a sensible amount of calories, a decent amount of protein, fiber. But yeah, those things fall to the wayside when training isn't happening the way that we want it to. So definitely an area of focus for people to, again, be knuckling down on. You're massive on like food quality. So what would be some of your thoughts around food quality and how that can impact progress?
People are going to switch off with my chat here. And literally, I don't mean like stop listening. I mean close the window, because people absolutely hate it when you get into food quality. It really polarizes a crowd. In case anyone watching isn't already like in the knowledge, like, I'll polarize you. Half of you won't be watching already. The other half are still here. You're my people. The rest of you, see you later in the bin. That's this week's in the bin. So I'm big on food quality, as Ollie said, like massive on it. I think it's just the way I was raised. Like my mum rode the kind of organic wave when it first hit in like the 90s. If you were anything to do with organic, you were a weird bastard. You basically, people assumed you made your own clothes from hemp. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were that person. Like, you grew it all in your own garden. Not the case, but whatever. I actually did a talk when I was 10 on, I got to do, when you had to do a presentation at that age, like yourself. I did mine on organic versus non-organic food. So I'm big on that, and you don't have to be. It's my view. I'm not going to force it down your throat. I value anything that doesn't have a thick skin, so bananas and oranges excluded. Anything that's either you consume the entire thing, fruit and veg wise, or with a thin skin, I'll buy organic. And then things like fish, like I put on my story last night, wild caught fish, absolutely all the time. My kind of goal is like, if it's expensive food, it's probably good. If it's free range, if it's wild, then in my opinion, it's better for you. And I think my general experience is I feel a lot better when I eat like that. Albeit that one packet of smoked salmon was like $7.50.
Fucking hell. They look good though.
It would make like sockeye salmon, until you've had proper wild caught sockeye salmon, you don't realize how shit that like almost white anemic looking crap is.
Well, you notice it most with like go and buy some eggs. Eggs is massive. Look at the eggs, look at the yolk. The difference is huge, and you have to question, why is that? What's happening at kind of root levels for it to have such disparity in like the coloring. So I do agree to some extent, and part of me finds it hard from like a nutritionist standpoint to step out of it's calories, bro. And it is, it ultimately is if we're looking at body composition. But if we're looking at health optimization, then what you put in does need to have a consideration for sure. Like, you can't be eating processed food every second of the day and expect to have the healthiest functioning body that you could hope for, But then at the same time, I'm definitely, to some extent, an advocate of if somebody's just starting out in their journey, to get the big rocks in place first and focus on the things that are important, you know?
Yeah, I think that's an important point that well added, because I regret not adding it, was that if, especially initially, calories, big rocks, and then at that point, if you've got all those things kind of nailed, then you can look at food quality. But I don't think it should be your initial all the time. Some people are going to struggle with that. But with calories being the topic just now, a lot of my clients, the reality is they were in massing phases. And a lot of people watching this will be or consider themselves to be or aware prior to COVID. For my guys, we've reassessed body fat percentage. We've therefore reassessed what their BMR is, trying to work out where they're at, and then taking them closer to maintenance. They're maybe still in a surplus, but their caloric expenditure is largely dropped, because sessions that were on, absolutely brutal hack squat sessions, we all know you're like near death experience sessions that you have. We're not doing that anymore. Therefore, your caloric expenditure has probably dropped quite significantly. And while it can be a bit of a head fuck to drop calories in the middle of a massing phase, when you're like, oh, I was building tissue, it was going well. I just explained to the guys, it's like, we can continue to eat at like 4,500 calories if you want, and you're going to look like a fucking dropped ice cream by the end of this. And if that's the physique that you're after, then that's fine with me, like a sock filled with custard. But
a bin bag full of yogurt with a zip tie around the middle.
That's right, mate. So I've been saying to the guys, like, let's just drop calories down. We'll stay in a mild surplus, and we can continue to aim to build muscle. But I think that's actually one of probably the key takeaways from this for me is, if you were or are in a surplus, just be making sure you're not in a massive one. And if you're not taking regular measurements because you don't have a coach, you absolutely should be now, because you need to be watching your umbilical, amongst other things, because it will expand at a greater rate than you're anticipating. If you're still eating 500-600 grams of carbs a day and you're doing 20 minutes of quote unquote weights training with beans and water.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Some of those videos, man.
I'm fucking done with Instagrams. Like I've seen enough home workouts to last me a lifetime. Like I'm good. I'm good for not providing us with home workouts. I'm all right.
I'll tell you who's great to follow just for some lulls is, do you know Paula Lima?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paula Lima, he basically just fucking rinses all the home workouts that he sees on Insta, and he puts that like really shit recorder music over the top. I absolutely love it.
He's cool, he's funny. But I think, let's be real, if you're in a surplus, re-establish maintenance, because it will be different to when you or the coach worked it out. Because it will have probably increased, because you will hopefully have accrued some more tissue, which is metabolically active. Probably not by a huge amount, but it will be increased. Where's your maintenance? Here's a question. I'll throw you a hot potato, and I'll take it if you don't want it. What percentage would you be talking going over on maintenance into a surplus just now? Would you work in percentages or not?
Do you know what? I'd be reluctant to be in a surplus personally. Like for my clients, I'd be prescribing maintenance for the most part. Just like you said, the likelihood of you accruing unnecessary amounts of body fat during this time is going to increase with the lack of caloric expenditure through training sessions, through just daily activity. So I'd be more inclined to push towards maintenance anyway. If there was a scenario where someone had a decent home gym or whatever, and I was going to push them into a surplus because they're in a massing phase, I don't know. You're going by like Lyle McDonald's recommendations. He had this like really cool calculator. I think it came out at like something ridiculous, like a 5% surplus or something tiny. Like people,
it's all right.
People. No, but it's the thing, isn't it? People think you need this huge surplus of calories to build muscle. It's tiny, man. Like the amount of additional food that you need above your maintenance is really, really low.
I agree, and that's 5% is what I've got. A few guys at 5%, but they're the guys with home gyms. Anyone who doesn't have access to a home gym and is like, oh, hey, bro, like my client's like, I've got these resistance bands. Can I stay in my surplus? Absolutely not, me.
Niche.
It's not happening. So we've been dropping everyone back to maintenance, and looking, just like I say, I think that's the biggest takeaway, isn't it? Maintenance over accrual right now. Protecting your gains is more important than chasing new ones and effectively just like building a slab of shite on top of your actual muscles. Because all you're doing is setting yourself up for less aerobic capacity, more hard work when you go back to the gym. And as much as it might be a bit of a head fuck to get your head round this whole like, I've always been chasing gains and all of a sudden now I can't. it kind of ties into what I said to my clients yesterday morning that I posted about yesterday. Is it's moving that kind of headspace. It's that shift in your head between I am confined in my own house to being cocooned in my own house. That like having that global change in understanding that right now what you had is not available to you right now. This is what you've got available. These are your options within that. And it's my, and I think our opinion that your best bet is now to maintain, protect, and work on a whole heap of other things. Sleep, nutrition, even for some of my clients, like their hydration has been like a questionable metric where I'm like, it's back to 1.5 liters again today. Come on. You know what I mean? Like these things are massive. And I've been saying that to clients is like a plus. If you can learn a couple of bits from things like this and then apply that back to training in X weeks time, you're going to be a better trainer as a result, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that pretty much covers everything that people need to be focusing on, right, during this time.
100%.
We covered it all there, man. And we've got a couple of things in the bin. We got what was it we put in the bin? People who aren't interested in food quality, they're in the bin, right?
The people that it's just the people that just like completely shun it. Like I just, you know, like the calories in, calories out club. Like I get it. The calories, I'm not here to tell you that they don't count. They're the most important thing for me a lot of the time. But food quality fucking matters, man. Like, if like that's the one sentence I would take from Aubrey's book that I wouldn't bin in the nutrition chapter is that you are what you eat. I rate that.
Yeah, I do rate that. I do rate that, and I think it's a nice general guideline to abide by. Even if you were somebody who disregarded calories for whatever reason, maybe you're just some sort of fucking maniac. Yeah. But if you were somebody who did, and you just went by that added. Now, obviously, there's going to be scenarios where people massively overconsume calories from eating healthy produce. Of course, we see that all the time. But you're going to be relatively healthy, you know, if you're monitoring what you eat in terms of the quality of the food. So it's not a bad thing to live by.
100% no. The other thing we put in the bin was beans workouts. I actually started doing one on my live call with my clients the other morning because they started taking the piss out of it. I'm like, right, be right back. Got some cans of beans. And then we played guess the amount of sugar in a can of beans. Do I have a flyer?
15.
20. You're pretty close, mate. Just under 20. One of the boys gets 100. I'm like, I think we need to work on your nutrition knowledge, bro. It's not even a 100-gram can. So yeah, beans cans and home workouts with like cobbled together things.
Yeah, cool. So we've got a fair few things in the bin now.
I need to make an image for the bin.
So, and we also, I think anybody who's managed to get this far should definitely comment either on the video or on socials with the word beans, just to let us know that they made it.
Let's start sharing cans of like people working out with beans. Let's make this like a troll thing. Like I'm going to post me training with beans and see, I'm not going to say that it's illegitimate and see how many people start doing it. We'll start our own movement.
Yeah, let's do it.
Beans are good for starting movements after all, guys.
Fucking hell, we need shares in the book, don't we?
Right, bro. It's been a pleasure.
As always, we'll obviously have to watch the video back and see what the audio is like with my son kicking off in the background.
I don't think it's that bad. Like I can hear him, but I think it's probably much louder where you're sat.
Right. Okay. Cool. Well, we'll see.
I mean, fuck it. We'll upload it and people can we'll see. We'll split the parents from the non-parents because the parents are a child in this video. Immune
to it.
The non-parents are like, fucking get that camera off.
All right. Well, sweet dude. I enjoyed that.
Right, boss. Thanks for joining us, guys. Remember to comment with a picture of beans on our Instagram story with no explanation for what's happening. Ideally, be training in some way, shape, or form with beans. Also, if you're buying non-brand beans, you're in the bin, so don't do it. Heinz or no deal. Heinz organic, actually. Right, we're going to finish on that note. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you later.
Cheers, guys. Bye.